We knew something was wrong beneath the surface of our small town. Years of exploration in the depths of the old town tunnels had yielded little more than forgotten passageways and forgotten histories. But something felt different now. The council had always kept a tight lid on what might be beneath, but there were always rumors circling around. You could not really escape them. We had rumors of strange vibrations, noises that no one could explain, and the worst part, the inexplicable disappearances. The lower tunnels, particularly, were a place most people avoided. They were old, buried beneath the sprawling town infrastructure, part of a system built so long ago that they had fallen out of use. But not everyone feared them. The scientists and urban explorers saw it as a challenge. The horizontal tunnels, though mapped and forgotten over the years, had always attracted a certain type of person. The ones who wanted to make discoveries, to push the boundaries of the known world. But there was something different about the vertical tunnels. Those had always drawn dreamers. You could climb up and down them for miles, hoping to see something, getting lost in the network. Maybe just a glimpse of something interesting. Who knows, maybe a new discovery. No one really made it that far though. The explorers who tried often never came back, or if they did, they were never quite the same. In the end, the government had sealed the entrances. People had given up on them. The buzz was always around the Hum Festival. It wasn't a festival in the traditional sense. It was more of a phenomenon. Once every year, for a few days, the lower tunnels seemed to vibrate. The ground would shake, like something massive moving deep beneath the town. The buildings would rattle, and the hum would echo through the underground chambers. It was a sound that no one could describe. Some said it was the sound of machinery. Others said it was a natural frequency, resonating deep in the earth, but no one could say for sure. At first, people thought it was just a strange byproduct of town construction, as a result of the heavy machinery used to dig tunnels and build skyscrapers. But as time went on, the events became more regular, and with the regularity came a strange effect: total mass panic. Animals would go wild, and people living near the tunnels would experience strange symptoms like nausea, vertigo, and sometimes even hallucinations, bad ones too. When people are like that, you can't even talk to them. They go absolutely crazy. In the last few years of the town, the research into the hum became more serious. Professor Mutabov, a leading scientist from the town institute, had built a network of sensors to track the vibrations, trying to understand the cause. His theory was that a massive, hidden system of geological formations was causing these unusual vibrations, and that something beneath the town was resonating in a way that had never been observed before by anyone on Earth. He was convinced that something massive was beneath the surface. Mutabov's team made extraordinary claims. They claimed that these vibrations were not random, but that they seemed to be coming from something alive. Or at least, something was behaving in a way that mimicked life. But no one ever took them seriously. I mean, who would believe that? The town's engineers dismissed the findings as faulty readings or noise caused by industrial equipment. No one was ready to accept that there could be something living beneath the town. And then, everything changed. One afternoon, the shaman, an old man who had lived in the town for decades, arrived at the town hall with Mutabov. He was drunk, stinking of alcohol, and completely incoherent. But when he began to point at the ground and spread his arms wide, the people listening became uneasy. The shaman had lived near the tunnels for years, and he had heard the hum too. He spoke of something ancient, a massive organism living deep underground, something that had been there long before the town was even built. He believed that it was starting to awaken. No one believed the shaman either. They had had to endure his ramblings for years and years. But then, something strange happened. The first of Mutabov's team went blind, and soon more followed. They had been conducting experiments with the sensors, and had gotten too close to the source of the hum. It wasn't just vibrations they were picking up. It was something else, something that affected their senses in a way that could not be explained. Mutabov himself was the next to lose his sight. He started talking about the hum as if it was a signal. Something like a song from deep underground is how he described it. He said the creature that was responsible for the vibrations was getting closer, rising slowly but steadily. He believed the creature was beginning to move and that soon it would reach the surface. The authorities, terrified by the implications of his claims, decided to evacuate the town. They sealed the tunnels and moved people to temporary shelters. Sordov, the mayor, who had a background in science, was the first to leave. He understood the data, and he understood the risks. I don't think he believed anything about Mutabov's claims about creatures underground, but I think he knew that the town was unstable and at risk. But when the evacuees returned a week later to survey the damage and retrieve their belongings, they found that the town had changed. The ground had cracked open, leaving massive sinkholes. The once bustling streets were gone, replaced by gaping holes in the earth, each one leading down into the forgotten tunnels. There were no signs of the people who had stayed behind, no trace of the research team or the workers who had been near the lower levels. The town was gone, swallowed by the earth. The hum had stopped, but the terror of what lay beneath lingered. What had been below the town for so long? What had caused the vibrations? And now, with the town gone, was there anything left? In the end, no one really knew. Some believed the hum was a natural phenomenon, a previously undiscovered geological anomaly. Others believed it was something far more sinister. But no one dared go near the tunnels again, and the area around them remained abandoned, a ghost town of memories and unanswered questions. The mystery of what lay beneath the earth would remain unsolved, lost to time and the dark, quiet tunnels. What you just heard, that's a story from my town. You would think it bullshit reading that, right? Some old folk tale passed down from generation to generation. I am telling you that it's true. It happened when I was just a boy, many years ago now. I can't tell you which country, but it is in Europe. Many of us were really poor and malnourished, especially the children. We were just a small, insignificant town, and so our government did not want to give us any aid. Because of this, we would do anything at all to find food or materials, or anything to make some money. If you had a steady job in this town, you were considered wealthy. Before we had heard about all of this evil, there was a researcher in my town. You could maybe call him a scientist, but like I said, this town was not massive. He gave me and a few other kids a bit of bread, and promised some coin if we went down under the town and told him what we saw. Said if we could bring back anything useful or valuable, he would pay us double its worth. He gave us a few matches and told us that he would only honor the deal for the first person who came back to him. That was all we needed. We raced off down there. I managed to beg my dad to lend me a flashlight that we had. It was shitty and barely worked and had to be repaired multiple times, but I would at least be able to see something. Finding an entrance was not too hard. Most of the entrances are well known for the purposes of avoiding going down there. The other kids beat me there, 3 others, and they ran in before me. I was left to catch up. I got in and the place was darker than I imagined. The flashlight that I had with me barely helped. It wasn't strong enough and did not go far enough. I started walking and exploring. There didn't seem to be much around where I came in to scavenge. No loose bits of metal or anything valuable. It was all just trash and sewage and rotting food and the like. I continued down in a straight direction for what felt like forever. I didn't see any of the other kids even once, so they must have gone far, like really deep in there. I quickened my pace as I did not want to let my family down. I needed to explore as much as I could and find something valuable and quickly. I took a few twists and turns and made my way further down. This is when I started to hear sounds. I stopped and listened, but it was hard to make out what I was hearing. It was faint. It sounded like someone kind of, squelching. A mixture of squelching and gurgling is the only way I can describe the sound to you. Like I said, it was faint, so I tried to figure out where it was coming from. It took me about 2 minutes in total to find myself well and truly lost. The place was like a maze and I was starting to panic. I had no idea where to go. I had not seen anyone the entire time. These sounds kept persisting on and off, and to top it all off, I had not found a single thing of fucking value down there. I kept on going, until the sounds got louder and louder. I eventually came to what was quite a large passageway. The whole way it had been quite narrow, but this one started to widen and grow in height. I figured maybe I must have been coming into the central chamber that branched off into every other path. I started to hear the sounds again, but now they were much closer. Not only closer, but they sounded more intense, more violent. When I got close enough to the main chamber to see into it, I stopped dead in my tracks. I could not believe what I was seeing. I don't even really know how to describe it. It was big, really big, pretty much oversized for the chamber that it was in. It looked like it was on the verge of growing too large and bursting out of the tunnels. It was like a big, writhing, mutated mass of some kind. In the center, absolutely massive, was some kind of bulbous red thing. It looked almost like a brain in design, but massive, bigger than me. It had those brain wrinkles, except they were more like rigid, I guess, wider. It had fangs coming off of it. You might mistake them for limbs or legs, but they were long. It had 4 or 5 of them extending off of it, like tentacles, I guess you could say. But they ended in sharp points like pseudo-claws. The bulbous brain part though, it was semi-transparent. It had some kind of viscous liquid running through it that you could see through. This isn't the only thing I could see in there though. One of the fucking kids. I did not see it at first until I moved closer, because he was far back, but I could see the kid's face. The rest of his body was too far down to see. His face was frozen in a look of sheer terror. It was like he was sucked in, frozen in place, and had that expression permanently fixed to his face. He did not move or speak or change facial expression even once. It looked to be preserving him, or maybe he was already dead, and this was a way of storing him for later. I had no fucking idea. I was still hearing that squelching and gurgling sound from earlier, but it was not from the kid in the liquid in the brain. There was another kid. God, even just thinking about that sight now makes me feel sick, and it has been so many years. It is a sight I will never be able to erase from my memory. Only the legs from the kid were visible. They were hanging out of the thing, straight upwards. They were kicking back and forth desperately, but it was not helping. With each second that I stood and watched, he was sinking in deeper and deeper. I was close enough now to hear his very muffled cries. I let out a scream, and it might have been the stupidest thing I could have ever done in my entire life. The limbs, the roots, whatever these things were, they stopped whatever they were doing. They started searching around, like they were being used as feelers. I started running at that moment as quickly as I could. They must have heard my running or felt the vibrations, because they swiped at me. I don't even know how I even escaped. These things were long, maybe 20 or 30 feet. I don't really know how to estimate it, but they chased me for what felt like forever. It was like I started running, and my vision went blank while I was running, and the next thing that I remembered was that I had made it outside. I will break greentext now, because it is tiring. I went back and found the scientist. I told him what happened and begged for help. I was still just a kid myself, remember, but all he did was slap me. He threatened me and told me if I told anyone of what happened, no matter the circumstances, he would come and kill me. He pulled out a scalpel he had and put it right up to my cheek and drew blood. He gave me a bit more bread and some other food and told me I was lucky to be getting that for how little work I had done. Told me to fuck off after that, and I ran home all the way to my parents. I was too scared to tell them what happened. In fact, I don't think I talked at all for maybe a week. I just told them that I failed and that I'm sorry I disappointed them and that I was scared of underneath the town and of living there. It took a few more years before we made it out. We moved when the evacuation warnings were given, and then we heard the rest of the story sometime after from people that we knew. That is my entire story. Make of it what you will. I had a weird experience similar to this other guy. I was asleep. I wake up to a weird small figure standing across the room from me. I am paralyzed as the figure starts to move towards me. All I can think to myself is, why can't I move my arms? I start becoming filled with what I can only describe as pure primal rage. As soon as the figure is beside my bed, the rage breaks the paralysis, and I leap at it and start beating the ever-loving fuck out of the thing. I wake up later, covered in sweat, heart near bursting. So either I beat the fuck out of an alien, or that was one real fucking intense dream. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Be me, 7-year-old little Slavic boy. I am living in a small rural village about 50 kilometers away from the Kazakhstan border. The village is pretty much in the Stone Age still, but it's cool because everyone knows everyone, and they're all pretty nice people for the most part. The village policeman takes me on rides with the tractor. Shit was awesome back then. We had a fucking original Siberian village shaman. People would often go to him with problems instead of the village doctor. He was a renowned man. I was playing tag in the woods with other children and my brother. It was getting dark, but no big deal for parents, because nothing ever happens here. I am it. I am looking for everyone for a while. It starts to get really dark, and I start to feel scared. I hear the laugh of my brother, so I move in the direction from where I heard the laugh. Then I hear the laugh of the other children from the opposite direction. I just feel like I am running in circles. I suddenly see firelight in the thicket. I go towards it and hear familiar singing. It is our village shaman sitting by the fire, singing and talking. I get closer to the clearing and see him sitting there with someone else. I get closer, call out to him, Uncle Wanjusha. I trip over some branches, making loud noises. I see him turn around to me, looking at me in disbelief. He turns toward the other man, which now stood. He was at least 3 meters tall and looked at me, glared at me, and smiled wide, with boar teeth coming from his mouth. I was afraid and closed my eyes and heard our shaman talking to him, but it was not Russian. I only recognized my own name. I heard large footsteps coming closer, closer, and passing beside me as I just pissed myself. Have you ever stood close to an elephant that was walking? If yes, you can just imagine his steps. It was just like that. Uncle Wanja picked me up and told me that I should not be afraid because I am a big boy. He brought me home and I rushed to tell my parents, but they laughed it off, and Uncle Wanja did too. As he left and said goodnight, he shook my hand and gave me a little piece of knotwood formed like a claw. Nothing strange happens after that, and we moved away around 2 years later. 2 weeks ago. I am now 25 years old. Package arrives at my home in Germany. It looks a bit busted and had Cyrillic letters. It's from the village, but it's not from my grandma. Package says, from Ivan. Remember the whole story. Slowly unpack the box. What the actual fuck? The contents were this: the skull of a fox, a single tiny pearl, a jaw harp, and a small ring made from bone which depicts 2 kissing animals. The ring was broken, but I glued it back together. What am I supposed to do with all of this shit? Call Grandma and ask what this is about. She tells me Uncle Ivan died a few days ago, and the mayor had carried out his last will. He sent out 2 boxes, one to me, and another one to the USA. I wonder, and try to figure out now, since 2 weeks, if any one of my former friends from back then moved to the US. I wonder if these items have some meaning. My girlfriend thinks the fox skull looks awesome as decoration in our living room. Be me. Be 17 years old at the time that this happened. I am living at home with my parents and little sister. She was about 13 years old at the time. I am a notoriously heavy sleeper, so much so that my family always joked that I could sleep through anything at all. One night, my mom wakes up at around 1 in the morning. My mom has been super in touch with what I guess is kind of like a sixth sense her whole entire life, bordering on premonitions and visions and stuff. Mom has this gut-wrenching feeling that we are all in danger. Immediately begins making her way to the other side of the house where me and my sister's bedrooms are. As she passes by the living room, she begins hearing the front door being violently slammed into, as if someone is trying to break the door down. Not worrying about stealth at all, just blatantly bashing in our door. She screams for my father, who at the time was exactly 40, in amazing shape and a fireman. Nobody wanted to mess around with my father. I had seen him in altercations before. Bad dude. He jumps up and grabs the only gun we owned at the time, a Defender handgun or something like that. But as soon as my dad gets to the living room, the banging on the door has stopped. Silent night. Mom runs to get my sister and I, while Dad keeps an eye on the front door. Now that the basics of what was going on has been explained, I am switching over to my perspective. I wake up to my mom and sister standing over me, shaking me awake, panic in their voices. I will never ever forget that. Being shaken awake by your near hysterical family, repeating in a hushed but horrified tone, "Someone is trying to get in the house," over and over again. I am my father's son, alright, because whenever my adrenaline kicks in, I instinctively go to fight, protect whatever is around me. So before I am even coherent, my feet are on the floor. Grab my edgy combat axe I had in the closet. I used to collect knives and hatchets when I was a younger edgy douchebag, and go to meet Dad in living room while Mom and Sis shuffle back into Sister's room, the farthest room away from the front door. Honestly, the scenery I saw walking into the living room will never leave me, forever burned into my mind. Pin drop silence. Only thing I can hear is my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Dad is pressed against a wall with a gun, in a tactical position, I guess. We have a large window above the door, and from the way our house faced, the moonlight pouring into the living room in the shape of the window is the only light in the house. My very old dog is standing with her hair raised, dead center, in the middle of the moonlight, staring at the door. She usually barks at just about anything. Seeing her staring so intently, in absolute silence, shook me. Suddenly, Mom and Sister's screams break the silence. Before me and my dad can even make it to the room, they've made it back out into the living room, hysterically spouting someone has been trying to open my sister's window. Forgot to mention, Mom had called the police while she was in the room with Sister. Aside from the big window above the front door, there are two, I guess you could call them, foyers or dining rooms to the left and right of the front door, with massive windows that basically take up the whole wall facing the street. We are all in the living room, completely silent, trying to hide from the sight of the massive windows. 10 minutes go by before Sheriff shows up, checks perimeter of the house before giving us the all clear. He sticks around and asks us questions and whatnot for about 20 minutes before he leaves. Did not sleep that night. Was about 2 in the morning once everything was said and done. Next night. As mentioned, Dad is a fireman, works 24-hour shifts. Dad is at the firehouse, and it's just me and Mom and Sis. About 1 in the morning, and again, wake up to just Mom this time, telling me she thought she heard something at her window. Her and Sis rush back into my bedroom this time, while I get the hatchet and wait in the living room. Honestly, there was no strangeness to it this time, no fear or confusion. I knew I was the only man in the house and instinctively readied myself to protect family. Sheriff comes again, and this time, stays in patrol car outside the house for an hour. Never happened again after that night. The imagery from those nights will honestly never leave me. In August of 1914, my home country of Ireland joined World War I. This story comes from my great-granduncle's friends, as told to me by my grandfather. None of them are alive to tell the story anymore. My granduncle was stationed somewhere at sea. I don't have the exact location, but it's important to know that they were at sea for the entirety of their time at war. My granduncle got no recognition for his time at war. It was him and 3 of his friends. I will call them A, B, and C. A was small and aggressive. B was very large and powerful, C was average in all aspects. Anyway, the three of them were on the same vessel at sea when it sunk. C said they were all immediately ordered to abandon ship. B says that they were ordered to stay and fight until the damage was too bad that they had to go. A never really gave that much detail. But either way, the ship was going down and they had to run. They hopped into a lifeboat and managed to escape out into the open water. While they were safe mostly from enemy fire, they had other pressing issues like a food and water shortage. They only had a flask of rum to hydrate them. It did little to aid them, and probably ended up doing more harm than it prevented in the long term. It took 2 days before they got any sort of food. They got it in the form of a fish that one of them had grabbed from the water. They were so hungry they picked it clean, but it was still so little food between them. That was when one of them asked the most difficult and dangerous questions you ask when lost at sea. A says it was C says it was A, and B says it was either C or my granduncle. But one of the men said, "Should we draw straws to see who gets eaten?" They used the ribs from the fish as makeshift straws. 4 pencil-thin ribs to see who was going to make it or not. A drew the longest, B drew the second longest, C drew the second shortest, and my granduncle the shortest. I will spare many of the details, but he was killed and eaten by the men. 5 days after they were first stranded, they were rescued and brought back to Dublin, where the local community hailed them as heroes. Nothing amazing or fancy. I don't even think it ended up in the paper, but people all through the neighborhood loved them. All except for my granduncle's wife and kids. They insisted that there was no drawing of straws, that my granduncle would never agree to such a thing. The story would have ended there, but this last part comes from my grandfather. C did not have a family. He did not have a wife or kids or even siblings. So, on his deathbed in the 1980s, my grandfather visited him. He told my grandfather this part of the story. Apparently, my granduncle, according to C, did not draw the short straw. It was B. C said B, angry and afraid, then killed my granduncle. They weren't going to kill 2 people, were they? Let alone the biggest and the strongest. B threatened the other 2 men and made them swear to never tell anyone. C was the last one alive at this point. A was just another casualty in World War II, and B was killed by an infected dog bite. C, then at his end, just wanted somebody to know the truth and finally be free of the guilt. I will green text this one, I guess. Be me. 15/16 years old at the time. I was spending the night at my friend's house. His parents let him live in a camper behind their house. They lived on about 40 acres, far out of town, maybe about 1.5 miles away from the main road. His parents were out of town for the weekend, and he had a small get-together, 2 other friends and me. We're drinking, smoking pot, being idiot teenagers, just as usual. I am the last person to pass out, around 4 a.m. We wake up to the camper violently shaking, and something grunting and beating on the back of it. No one is missing, and my friend was an only child. Everyone is waking up and coming to the same realization that there is something or someone out there doing this. The pounding stops. We all run outside to check shit out now that the coast is clear. Nothing. Fucking nothing at all. Not even tracks are left behind. There are dents in the back of the camper, but there are no other signs that anything happened at all. We are all freaking out. We decide to go back to the camper and try to go back to sleep. Suddenly, we all hear a loud howl, but it did not sound like a dog or a coyote, and I don't even think there are any wolves left in western KY. We are trying to figure out where it came from, but we can't see anything besides forest. We all note back into the main house. We tactically shit ourselves as we start locking up the house. Friend tries to find the key to his dad's gun cabinet. We hear that fucking howl yet again. We are now all freaking the fuck out. we hear the camper being beaten on again. No one is brave enough to look outside the windows, so we all just hide in the house, shit scared. The beating eventually stops after maybe 15 or 20 minutes of it happening. We just stayed in the house until later that afternoon and noped the fuck out all the way back home. I spent the night with him again the next week in the camper, but his parents were back by then, and nothing crazy happened, ever again.